Hi, my name is Claire Morgan. I'm a 32-year-old marketing director living in Seattle, and until recently, I thought I knew what family loyalty meant. For 2 years, I quietly paid my parents' mortgage, no questions asked, no conditions. I thought love was about showing up even when they didn't. But then came my wedding, and the truth hit harder than I ever imagined. The chairs reserved for my parents were the only ones left empty in the whole wedding hall. Every other seat was filled colleagues in pastel suits, distant cousins I hadn't seen in years, college friends teary-eyed behind their phones, even Jason's gruff uncle who swore he hated weddings. All present, all smiling. But those two chairs, center aisle, third row embroidered with golden name tags I had printed myself. They sat untouched, silent, condemning. The music swelled. My fingers curled tighter around the bouquet orchids, trembling. Jason turned to me, his hand brushing mine. "You look beautiful," he whispered, but his voice was distant, muffled by the roaring in my head. They said they had a flat tire. I blinked slowly, my eyes scanning the hall again, as if their silhouettes might magically appear. A flat tire. That was the reason Margaret and Robert Hamilton, two of the most punctual, reputation-obsessed people alive, missed their eldest daughter's wedding. Sophie, my younger sister, had texted an apology an hour before the ceremony. "They're really sorry. Something came up. Don't make a scene." I didn't reply. I didn't cry either, not then. I just let the ceremony happen around me like a slow-moving avalanche. Vows, cheers, champagne flutes clinking. It was all perfect on the outside, which somehow made the hollow ache inside even louder. Later at the reception, people assumed they were just late. "Maybe caught in traffic," someone whispered. I offered a tight smile, neither confirming nor denying. I didn't want pity. I wanted answers. And yet I already knew them. Jason's parents danced with us during the couple's waltz. His mother, Naomi, kissed my cheek and called me her daughter. His father gave a toast that made half the room cry. And all I could think about through the cake, cutting the speeches, the lights dimming into a slow, sparkling evening was those goddamn empty chairs. I stepped outside for air. The courtyard was quiet, strung with fairy lights, and smelled faintly of jasmine and smoke. I leaned against the stone railing and let myself breathe. They didn't forget. They chose not to come. They had RSVP'd. They had approved the menu. They had made suggestions on the playlist. They had asked for front row seats, and still they weren't here. My phone buzzed. A message from Valerie, my father's sister. I tried talking to them. I really did. "I'm so sorry, Claire." My fingers trembled as I typed back, "You were here. That's what matters." And it did. But only partly. Inside, Jason was spinning his niece around the dance floor. My bridesmaids were cheering on Sophie as she downed a champagne tower, her cheeks flushed and glowing. She wasn't mourning our parents' absence. Why would she? She still had them. Had their approval. Their affection. I stared at my reflection in the glass door. I didn't look abandoned. I looked married, grown, steady. And yet the wound was fresh, pulsing beneath the lace of my gown. I had paid for this entire wedding myself. Every flower arrangement, every napkin fold, every shuttle van. They knew that. They knew how hard I had worked to make this happen. And they still didn't show up. Why? The question gnawed at me all evening. I asked it silently, through every forced smile, through every congratulatory hug. The answer came from Jason, softly, casually, as we were unpinning corsages in the bridal suite hours later. "I keep forgetting you've been helping them with their house," he said. "It's wild how much you've done for them." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. He looked up from his cufflinks. "Didn't you say you've been covering their mortgage for a while since Sophie had her surgery?" I stared at him, stunned. "I never told you that." Jason blinked. "Didn't you know?" I hadn't. I hadn't told anyone. Not him. Not my friends. Not even Valerie. I had kept that secret out of some twisted loyalty, a sense of duty they had never earned. But Jason knew, which meant someone else had told him, which meant my parents had spoken about it. Bragged, maybe. They had taken my help. month after month, quietly, willingly. And then on the one day they were supposed to show up for me, they didn't. I sat down on the bed, the gown crumpling beneath me. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took off my heels one slow motion at a time. Jason didn't press. He only placed a hand on my back and said, "You don't have to explain. I'm just sorry they didn't come." I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek until the taste of metal grounded me. I wouldn't cry over them. Not tonight. But I couldn't ignore it either. Not anymore. And yet I couldn't stop staring at those two empty chairs. The mortgage payment was $3,000 a month, and I had been covering it for 2 years. It started after Sophie's car accident. Dad had called late at night, his voice a hushed mixture of panic and pride. "She survived, Claire. She's strong, but we're drowning in bills. The hospital costs, the rehab, none of it was cheap." I offered help. He didn't refuse. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. Just a few months until things settled, but months stretched, and somehow, without a formal agreement, I became the invisible financial backbone of their household. Every 12th of the month, I transferred $3,000 to a joint account. I never missed a payment. I kept the receipts tucked away in a folder named Family. I never asked for thanks. I never asked for anything, and still they didn't show up. I sat at the kitchen island the morning after my wedding, Jason making coffee behind me, my laptop glowing faintly in the dim light. The honeymoon had been postponed. We told everyone it was because of Jason's work, but really I didn't want to travel with this bruise in my chest. I opened the banking portal. There it was, the scheduled transfer for today. Line item, routine, automatic. I stared at it for a full minute before dragging the mouse over to the cancel button. My finger hovered. Jason walked by, setting a mug next to me. "Everything okay?" I didn't answer. I just clicked cancel. A small pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to delete this scheduled payment?" Yes, I was sure. I hit confirm. It was done. Jason didn't press. He just sat beside me, hands wrapped around his mug. "You don't have to carry them anymore, Claire." I know I said, though, I wasn't sure I truly believed it yet. I had been raised to believe family was obligation, not choice. You gave, and when they didn't show up for you, you still gave more. That's what daughters did. But daughters also grew up. I drafted the email slowly. Every word had weight. Subject: mortgage payments, ending support. Dear Mom and Dad, I hope this finds you well. I wanted to inform you that I will no longer be covering the mortgage payments on the house starting immediately. I've honored this commitment for 2 years without fail, and I believe that's more than fair. I wish you both the best moving forward. Claire? I stared at it. My heart beat loud in the silence. Then I hit send. 2 hours passed. No response. At noon, I got a text, not from my parents, but from Sophie. "You serious right now? You're just gonna leave them high and dry?" I didn't reply. 3 minutes later, another message. "You're being selfish. Mom and Dad have enough stress already." I read it twice. My jaw clenched. Selfish. After 2 years. After covering for them without a word. After being abandoned on my wedding day. I opened my calendar, scrolled back to 2 weeks before the wedding. I had offered to hire them a car service. Just in case I'd said. My dad refused. Said he and Mom would drive themselves. I called the tow company listed in their supposed flat tire incident. The woman on the line sounded confused. "Hamilton. Sorry, hon, we didn't have any tow dispatched to that address on that date." Of course they didn't. I ended the call and sat back, breathing in through my nose. The lie had been that simple, that careless. They hadn't wanted to come. And they never expected a consequence. By 3 p.m., I still hadn't heard from either of them. Just Sophie, still angry, still demanding. That night, Jason and I opened a bottle of wine. He asked if I wanted to talk about it. I said no. Instead, I opened the drawer with the folder labeled Family. I pulled out the printouts, 24 months of bank statements, payment confirmations, even one notarized letter I had asked my lawyer friend to draft in case something ever happened. Jason raised an eyebrow. You kept all of this? I wanted to believe I mattered, I said. Turns out the money did, not me. He didn't argue. He just held my hand. We sat there surrounded by receipts of a loyalty never reciprocated. Starting tomorrow, the house was officially their problem again. I didn't expect the letter to blow up online, but it did, and fast. It was Valerie's idea. She'd come by with a pie and a bottle of wine, her way of checking in without making it look like she was checking in. She saw the printed letter sitting on my counter beside the crumpled bank statements and the unopened envelope from Sophie. You wrote it? She said, nodding toward the page. I shrugged. I wasn't planning to post it. She raised an eyebrow. Then why format it like a statement to the press? That made me laugh dry and brief. Valerie picked it up and read it in silence. When she finished, she folded it neatly and said, You should post it. Not out of spite, but because you're allowed to speak. I told her I'd think about it. Later that night, I sat at my desk watching the cursor blink on the screen. My email had gone unanswered. My text messages had been left on read. Only Sophie had replied, and hers were laced with venom and entitlement. So I opened my notes app, copied the letter I'd written, and posted it on Facebook. The caption was simple, just to clear the air. I locked my phone and went to bed. By morning, it had 432 shares. By noon, over 1,000. People I hadn't spoken to since high school were tagging me. Old neighbors were commenting good for you. A woman named Lacey, whose face I didn't even recognize, messaged me. Thank you for saying what so many of us are too afraid to. Apparently, cutting off your parents after silently supporting them for 2 years struck a chord. The local gossip page picked it up. Then one of those toxic family support groups reposted it with the headline, Daughter Pays, Mortgage for 2 years gets ghosted at her own wedding. Here's her response. I sat on the couch, knees tucked under me, scrolling through hundreds of comments. She's better than me. I'd have let the house go under a year ago. Claire is a queen. My mom did something similar. We don't speak now and I don't regret it. I didn't know what I expected. Guilt, maybe. Backlash. But the overwhelming response was solidarity. I started getting friend requests, messages from strangers, a few trolls too, of course, accusing me of airing dirty laundry. But I didn't care. The truth was out, and it didn't need anyone's approval. Jason called from work around lunch. You okay? I think so. You're trending on Reddit. I laughed. Seriously? He chuckled. There's a screenshot of your letter on R. True off my chest. People love you. I pressed a palm to my forehead. Oh God. No, really. They're saying you handled it with grace. Grace. That word stuck with me. I hadn't felt graceful. I'd felt wounded, furious, raw, but I hadn't lashed out. I'd simply stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't bring me a Band-Aid. By early evening, the messages shifted tone. Friends of my parents, people I hadn't seen in years, started chiming in. Some subtle, some not. I'm sure there's more to the story. Sad to see families falling apart over money. Maybe this should have stayed private. I ignored them all. Then Valerie called. Claire, are you sitting down? What now? Sophie just posted something. My stomach dropped. I opened Facebook, fingers suddenly clumsy. There it was, her status update written in the smug tone only she could master. It's wild how some people play victim while cutting off the very people who raised them. Don't believe everything you read online, folks. The comments were a mix, some defending her, others clearly referencing my post. I didn't respond. I didn't even react. But 5 minutes later, my phone rang. And now Sophie was calling. Sophie's voice was sharp, and I could already hear the anger before she even said my name. You really thought going viral would fix everything, she snapped. You think strangers clapping for you online changes what you did? I held the phone away for a second as if distance might buffer the hostility pouring through. Then I brought it back to my ear. What I did, you embarrassed them, she hissed. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad won't leave the study. And now the whole neighborhood is talking. I let out a breath, slow and steady. Sophie, they didn't come to my wedding. They lied about a flat tire, and I paid their mortgage for 2 years. They didn't ask you to. That made me laugh, bitter and short. No, they just accepted it, every single month. Without question, without a thank you. You really think that's normal? They were going through a lot. You know that. Everything with me, the bills, dad's job, I know what they were going through. I cut in. And I helped. Quietly. Consistently. And they still couldn't show up for the biggest day of my life. Sophie went quiet. For a beat, I thought maybe she was starting to understand. But then she sighed low and theatrical. You always make everything about you. I gripped the countertop until my knuckles turned white. This was about me. It was my wedding. That post you made, it made them look like monsters. They made themselves look like monsters. Another silence. This one heavier. Then Sophie's tone shifted colder now, less defensive, more cutting. You know what your problem is, Claire. You think you're better than everyone. You left. You went to college. You moved to the city. You married some guy from a different world, and now you look down on us. My chest tightened. I've never looked down on anyone. You don't fit anymore, she said. And maybe that's why they didn't come. Something cracked in me then. A soundless rupture, deep and irreversible. So they punished me for growing. They didn't say it like that, Sophie muttered. Then how did they say it? I demanded. Did they even talk about it? Or were they too busy pretending I didn't exist? They were scared. Okay, that stopped me. Scared of what I asked, though. I already felt the answer crawling toward me like a cold wind. Another pause. Then she said it low, ashamed almost like she wanted to swallow the words before they fully formed. They didn't come because they didn't want to see you marry a black man. I froze. Every noise in the room vanished, the hum of the fridge, the ticking wall clock, even my own breath. Sophie kept talking, but her voice sounded far away like an echo down a long tunnel. Dad said it would be awkward, that people would judge, that they just weren't ready to see it. Mom cried for days. I told them they were being ridiculous, but they didn't listen. My mind replayed every scene from the wedding, every unanswered message, every tight smile they gave Jason in the past that I chalked up to nerves. And now it all made sense. They didn't skip my wedding because of money, or stress, or some tired excuse. They skipped it because of hate. That's when she blurted it out. They didn't come because they didn't want to see you marry a black man. I stared at the phone long after Sophie hung up my hand, still frozen in place. The room was still, but my thoughts spun like a cyclone. Her voice still echoed in my ears, every word sharp as glass. They didn't want to see you marry a black man. I'd known. Deep down, I had always known. But hearing it, having it confirmed, was a different kind of violence. I sat down slowly, as if my body weighed twice as much as before. Jason came in with a basket of laundry and froze when he saw my face. What happened? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Then, after a breath that trembled on its way out of me, I said, Sophie told me why they didn't come. He put the laundry down and walked over. Do I want to know? I nodded. Because you already do. His shoulders tightened. Say it. They didn't come because they couldn't handle seeing me marry you. He sat beside me, his hand finding mine strong and steady. That's on them. I nodded again, but my eyes were already stinging. I had defended them so many times. Told Jason they were just old-fashioned or a little awkward or from a different era. I had done the emotional math for them, made excuses they never asked for, but also never denied. And now there were no more excuses to give. The worst part wasn't the racism. The worst part was the cowardice. They hadn't even had the courage to say it to my face. They cloaked it in silence, wrapped it in absence. They lied, then expected me to keep paying the bills. Jason pulled me into a hug. No words, just warmth and a steady heartbeat to ground me. I want to write another post, I whispered. Do it, he said. I opened my laptop. This time it wasn't a letter. It was a declaration. For everyone who asked why, here it is. My parents didn't come to my wedding because they couldn't stand the fact that I married a black man. Not because of money, not because of distance, not because of scheduling, because hate sits deeper than any excuse. I paid their mortgage for 2 years. I gave more than I ever received. And still it wasn't enough to make them see me or Jason as worthy of celebration. I'm done trying. Let this be a lesson to every daughter still waiting for the apology that will never come. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep your family warm. Love, Claire. I hit post. This time the reaction wasn't just support, it was thunder. People shared their own stories. About being disowned, about interracial love, about the quiet violence of prejudice wrapped in politeness. I was invited to speak on a podcast. An editor from a women's magazine DM'd me. My inbox was a stream of solidarity, grief, and rage, and then an email from Mom. The subject line was blank. I hesitated for a long time before clicking. Claire, I saw what you wrote. It's not fair. You don't understand everything we've been through. Your father has his ways. Yes, but he loves you. We both do. We didn't come because we thought it would make things worse, not better. Please don't make this public. This is family. Mom, I stared at the message. No apology. Just defensiveness. Just a plea to keep things quiet like always. I deleted it. That night, I walked to the kitchen, made myself tea, and sat in silence. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel obligation. I felt free. The kind of free that comes from no longer begging people to love you the way you love them. Jason joined me at the table. How are you feeling? I smiled faintly. Lighter. He nodded, then raised his cup toward me. To freedom. We clinked cups, and I finally said it out loud. They are no longer my problem. They showed up a week later on my porch, no warning, no apology in sight. It was a Saturday morning. Jason had gone to pick up groceries. I was still in my robe, tea in hand, when I heard the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, Dad and his stiff button-down mom clutching her purse like it held the words she couldn't say. I opened the door, but only halfway. Claire, Mom said, trying for a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hi. I answered flat. Dad cleared his throat. Can we come in? Why, that caught them both off guard. For a moment, they looked at each other like they hadn't rehearsed this far. We just want to talk, Mom said, voice soft. I opened the door wider, but only stepped out onto the porch and pulled it shut behind me. I wasn't about to let that energy into my home. They stood there uncertain, as if the closed door behind me was louder than any words I could have spoken. I read your post, Dad said finally. I figured. Mom wrung her hands. It hurt. To see it all out there like that. I raised an eyebrow. Imagine how it felt to live it. Silence. I watched them try to form the shape of an apology without saying the word. It was painful, like watching two people learn to walk in a storm. We didn't mean to hurt you. Mom offered eyes glassy. We just didn't know how to handle it. Everything felt so fast, and Jason, She didn't finish the sentence. I didn't help her. Dad stepped forward. We come from a different time, Claire. That's not an excuse, I said. It's a fact, but not an excuse. He nodded slowly. I suppose you're right. I waited. Look, he continued. We may have made some mistakes. You did? I interrupted. Not may. You did. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. I took a deep breath. I paid your mortgage for 2 years without a word. I invited you into my life again and again, even after every cold glance, every microcut. And you couldn't even show up for me. You couldn't show up for love. Mom's eyes brimmed with tears. We were scared. I was too, I said, voice low. But I showed up anyway. They didn't answer. I'm not angry anymore, I added. Not in the way I was. But I've drawn my line. I won't chase you. I won't beg for your presence or your approval. More silence. only the wind now brushing the edges of our little standoff. If you ever want to be in my life, I continued, you'll need to earn your place there. And that starts with an actual apology, not an excuse, not a justification, a real acknowledgement of what you did and what you chose. Mom opened her mouth, closed it again. I could see the words forming, the resistance softening, but not breaking. That was okay. It wasn't for today. I'm not shutting the door, I said. But I'm not opening it wide either. Not yet. They both nodded, awkward, uncertain, but perhaps finally listening. Dad looked down at the steps. I don't know what to say. I almost smiled. Then say nothing. Just mean it when you do. I stepped back. They didn't follow. Just stood there letting the silence do what words couldn't. I turned. And when I closed the door behind me, I didn't cry. Betrayal often hides behind silence, but when Claire shut that door without tears, it was more than closure. It was liberation. In standing her ground, she reclaimed not just her dignity, but the right to define family on her own terms. Like a storm that clears the sky, truth came late, but when it did, it swept away years of quiet suffering. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Like, share and subscribe if this story moved you, and comment 1 if you've ever felt the same.